Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your high-tech hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Today we summoned 3 shows that employ the power of science to its maximum capacity. First, John will return to the world of one of his favorite LNCU, aka Light Novel Cinematic Universes, aka A Certain Magical Index. But this time, he gets to explore the science side with A Certain Scientific Accelerator. Next, we will talk about the importance of science in case you get space-napped and have to find your way back home to your planet and your loving, families in Astra Lost in Space. And last but most definitely not least, we will discuss the final chapter in one of our favorite anime franchises, the 5th season of the beloved science fiction battle action musical Symphogear. If that sounds like a fun time to you, don't wander off into deep space. We'll be right back.
LNCU, huh?
Mm-hmm. I went there.
That's a new one. I don't think I thought of referring to Raildex, as it were, like that before, but you know.
I mean, it works. It's at this point, it's like 3 different series that are kind of interconnected, but kind of also stand on their own. So yes, that works.
Yeah, I mean, they all sort of happen alongside / within each other. So
yeah.
So A Certain Scientific Accelerator is the order of the hour. I guess I didn't do my research good enough because I finally figured out that this takes place like during Index 1 after the fight between Toma and Accelerator. So this is like close-ish to the start of the series, I guess.
So even before like Lost Order attaches herself to him?
Well, Lost Order is there. I don't know. They seem like there was a lot of convenient details like that because she is there and she's very familiar with Accelerator, so
weird.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that has come out of Kamachi's head with this whole media empire, as it were, has been interesting to say the least, I guess. But yeah, Accelerator is now the second major spin-off of Index, the first being Railgun. And it, as you would imagine, centers around, guess who, Accelerator. One of the top level 5 espers in Academy City.
Also a jackass.
Jackass with a heart of gold,
yes.
Question mark?
I guess that's what he was by the end of Index 1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he will ever be a good person, just, not an entirely shitty person.
Yes.
Unless he pulls a really hard turn in New Testament, which I have no knowledge of how the story plays out in that. But I mean, toward the end of, granted, Index 3 is after the series takes place, he sort of is starting to be like, yeah, Toma's the good guy. Maybe I shouldn't like follow in his footsteps, but maybe I should try and do better.
Yeah, carve my own way, but like a more righteous one, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, Toma's just there. He's like, I've got this arm.
Yeah.
I've got this arm. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So a lot of the story in this particular series revolves around the fact that Anti-Skill, which is like one of the law-keeping, peacekeeping organizations in Academy City, there's bad stuff going on in Anti-Skill. There's this sub-organization that's kind of growing out of it with dissenters called DA, Disciplinary Action, because sure, Kamachi's naming conventions are just the weirdest stuff. I don't pretend to understand the way he comes up with some of the names, but that's fine. And the first part of this story sort of revolves around rooting out the bad parts of Anti-Skill and making sure that this police force is on the up and up. And this sort of seemed like I don't know if you could call it a political statement, but considering how law enforcement is in certain parts of the world, and some cops are better than other cops.
Sure.
You could say that it makes something of a statement. Not really a lasting or a big one, but it's there. So the other major part of the story circles around that this is part of what's called the Necromancer arc. And Accelerator runs across this girl, depending on which translation you're looking at, because I've seen it written two ways. It's either Estelle or Esther Rosenthal. There's some weird inconsistency there. And when she sees just how, because Accelerator is strong, we know that. He's really, his power basically revolves around like changing the vectors of, of physics and bending them, like basically like turning attacks around that would otherwise hit him.
Yeah, changing trajectory and changing the acceleration of the objects that
Exactly.
he manipulates.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, and Esther, for the sake of consistency, I'll just say Esther. Esther sees, hey, you're really strong. Would you be my master and teach me how you work? And, Accelerator's like, man, fuck off. But, he kind of tells her to buzz off, but not like, I don't know how to describe it. Everything about this particular series is weird because they sort of start to take the focus off of Esther because there are these other necromancers at play. There's this guy Hishigata who's he's working with DA, but he's kind of using them to accomplish his own means. He's got like these sort of like robot construct things that are being controlled by corpses of people, and it's
Ugh.
weird. Yeah, and a lot of this is going towards trying to help his sister who is dead or dying. It's kind of muddy how they describe it. Esther also has the ability to like not really revive people, but like reanimate them and put these like guardian spirits in them that are based off of apparently a mix of like Taoism and stuff from like the Kabbalah, and it's needlessly complex, as is the MO with most of Raildex.
Yeah, I
But you
was
know
about to
what?
say that seems to be like a common theme between all of those series. Like, hey, we have this plethora of influences. Let's just throw them in there.
Yeah, Hichigata Mikihiko is his name. He basically wants to try and revive his sister Hirumi, and Esther kind of does that, but Hirumi gets taken over by one of these one of these spirits that turns out to be it's kind of evil called Tau, and kind of goes on a rampage, and the focus is kind of taken off Accelerator like for a large chunk of the series, and it becomes more about Esther and Hirumi more than anything else. And I was just sort of like, mm, mm.
Well,
But the name of the show though.
yeah, that. That makes me think of Mad Max, like where he is kind of the protagonist, but not really. Where especially in the newest one, where it's like, no, this is actually Furiosa's story, and he's just as usual the character who maybe kicks things into motion, but he's still the one who stumbles into it and is more like the side guy. And I wonder if Accelerator is like inhibiting the same role in this story, kinda. But then in matters are like Estelle and the other one, are they like are they compelling characters to carry this, or compelling enough to carry the story, or is it like I'd rather see Accelerator be the main character here?
It's not really. I'm gonna level with you. This series was kind of boring on the whole, to be honest.
Oh, that's a shame.
It's been, oh Jesus, when did Index 1 air? It's been a long time since the anime started. Yeah, it's been a long time since the anime started. And back when it started, it was pretty cool. It was pretty fresh. Maybe it's just, all of these years that have passed that now it's kind of like, All right. Okay. And the fact that, they put it on ice for 8 years. So I don't know if that sort of is starting to color my opinion. And, this sort of comes off of Index 3, which was a
Also
mess.
a letdown, yeah.
Yes. But I will say this, the production values in Accelerator were about 10 steps up in comparison.
Well, that's something.
Yeah, it looks a lot better. It was directed by someone different, Nobuharu Kamanaka, who's one of his other big directorial roles was in the perennial favorite Big Order.
Oh, Jay, yeah, I reviewed that. That fucking trash fire. Holy shit.
But he had some other episode direction and stuff like Beck, Birdie the Mighty, Yuru Camp, Persona 4. Persona 4, Robotics Notes, and Working. So, there's some good stuff under his belt.
Talk about series that I want a sequel to Birdie the Mighty Decode. Like, the first season was good, the second season was fucking amazing, and on kind of on an open note, and we're like, okay, where's this going? And then we don't get never got a sequel. And I was like, fuck! That's such a bummer, such a good show.
My knowledge of Birdie is it exists.
It's worth checking it out, but the problem is that the ending is kind of frustrating because it's not an ending really. So that's the problem. The old OVA is fun too, and both versions look fucking amazing. Decode a bit better, but goddamn, that those are good looking shows. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
That's cool. Maybe I'll have to check it out at some point. Then I don't know. But yeah, this is at least, like I said, in terms of production, has a marked step up, which this show needed. If it didn't, Index 3 looked like a trash fire. Mm-hmm. If this came out the gate looking the same, and I will say I was a little worried from the first couple PVs because there were some shots that are like, boy, that animation looks incomplete. But, maybe. And I feel like I said this during a sneak peek. Maybe it was a case of we need this PV cut now sort of thing. So because there were some scenes that were in the PV that in the actual show were like, oh, okay, no, they managed to pull it together and it looks fine. So I just don't feel like I like Accelerator as a character, and I think there's potential to tell interesting stories on his own. This particular part of the story is not it, because Esther is not an interesting character. Because it turns out she wasn't actually part of the Rosenthal bloodline to begin with or something.
Well, if it's not told like in an interesting way, I can imagine that being like kind of annoying or not engaging at least.
I mean, she reanimates the corpse of this one dead girl with one of the spirits, and she fights alongside Esther. And she's pretty cool. Because she's there to just be like, I'm gonna just kick your ass because you said so. All right, let's go, sort of thing. And that's whatever. That's fine. I feel like that idea of not really reviving someone, but using their body to inject some sort of power into it like that. That's also an idea that has potential, and I feel like it's got to have been done 100 times before.
To a varying degree, even in Fate, right? I mean,
yeah.
So the idea of summoning someone who fights for you for an extended time, that is nothing new. The question is how it has been integrated in the show. And I mean, the necromancer aspect in itself is interesting. And if there's some interaction between the characters between Estelle and the characters she summons, that is kind of meaningful, and they have some interesting stuff to tell us, and that could be cool, but it sounds like that really isn't in there.
Yeah. I mean, they try to lean a little bit on the whole, obviously mysticism and all these big crossroads of different beliefs and religions. So this one girl that Esther reanimates, Her name is Hasami Hitokawa, and she gives her this spirit named Huto. Depending, it's read differently in Chinese than it is in Japanese, I guess, because it's pronounced like Kato in Japanese. It's strange. Uh, for two languages that have such close roots, for one word to be written one way and read the other, that's just something I never quite wrapped my head around. I mean, most interesting because Kato refers to Esther as Adonai, which is the Hebrew name for God, which I thought that was interesting, and I guess it thematically kind of makes sense because Esther is calling the spirit and putting it into this dead body for her personal use, and all right, I guess that's a neat little sort of way of executing on that relationship between her and her spirits.
Sure.
Hirumi kind of ends up like getting taken over by the spirit that's inhabiting her body, like I said, and ends up turning into big, giant, weird monster thing because, all right, and Accelerator comes along and saves the day in the last episode and a half. I don't think the show is inherently, this series was inherently bad, and I'm struggling to really talk about it because it feels like there wasn't a lot to talk about. I mean, they fight DA. They find out that, like I said, Mikihiko is, using DA to his ends. His sister's got a demon in her. The demon tries to destroy Academy City. Accelerator pushes the win button.
Okay. Well, there we go. Usually Toma presses the win button, so.
Well, I mean, Toma's not around because this isn't his part of the story, so all right.
Hey, are there any other cameos of Raildex characters, or is it just Last Order and Accelerator this time?
I mean, we see some of the anti-skill members, like Yomikawa is there. She has a presence in the show. She sort of showed up a bit more in Railgun than in Index, if I remember correctly. And, she's here to be like, yeah, if you need anti-skills help, we're here to help, and we know that there's something really wrong in our ranks. So that much is interesting for a familiar face. But yeah, I don't know if you're already this deep in the Raildex mythos. You might enjoy this. I thought it was maybe, I guess, okay at best. Not strictly bad, just a lot less interesting than I was hoping for. Maybe there are others out there who find it more enjoyable than I did, but the real meat and potatoes of the story was, originally the magic side, Index.
Hmm.
And, Railgun was there as a supplement. Speaking of, Railgun T starts airing next season, and I'll see how I feel about if I want to watch that. Because at this point, I'm not sure how much longer I want to stick around with this.
I mean, side stuff can be interesting. You can look at the spin-off of Zeta Card Children, The Unlimited Hyobo Kyosuke. That was a show that I watched and really enjoyed, and that is only a spin-off of the original show and turned out to be actually more interesting than the original show, kinda. So it can happen this way too, I guess. In this case, though, and considering that the original series with Index 3 isn't that stellar these days, at least production-wise, anymore either, maybe that thing, Index as a whole, has just outworn its welcome at this point. But I mean, like you said, you'll probably see if the new Railgun can't grab you either, then you probably have your answer.
Yeah, because I mean, God, the anime, as far as it goes in the anime, this has been around for 11 years now. The light novel started 15 years ago. So I don't know whether or not to say it's worn out its welcome, because there are other contemporary series that are running almost as long and they still haven't really run out of steam. depending on who you ask. Sword art. But Accelerator didn't do it for me. And maybe there are people out there who will enjoy this more than I did. If you want to check it out, it's on Crunchyroll, Verve, and Funimation with pretty much, the rest of the franchise if you want to get current, as it were. But yeah, I don't know how to recommend this or if I would, but if you're looking for a side story with Accelerator, this is probably not it. I don't know how the story develops later on in the manga, because apparently there's a lot more story in the Accelerator manga beyond what was in the anime, so maybe it gets better, maybe I'll check it out, I don't know. But for now, I guess that's just where I'll leave it.
In 2063, space travel has become possible and commercially viable. A group of students from Caird High School departs to the nearby planet of Mekpa for their planetary camp. Soon after the group arrives on the planet, the 9 children encounter a mysterious and unforeseen intelligent sphere of light. It attacks them, transporting them into the distant depths of space. Floating in orbit around an unknown planet, they discover an old abandoned spacecraft nearby. Finding it in working order, they resolve to use the ship to return home. To do so, they must cross the 5,012 light-year gulf of space separating them from home by visiting alien planets harboring life to replenish and manage their limited resources. The long and dangerous journey home aboard their vessel, which they name Astra, brings with it new character revelations, strengthening the bond they share and the eventual realization that the stakes of their journey are far higher than any of them could ever have realized. So yeah, Astra Lost in Space, or Kanata no Astra, was it that? I think so. Is based on a manga by Kenta Shinohara and ran for 5 volumes from May 2016 to December 2017. Shinohara also did the character designs for the anime Battle Spirits Burning Soul and wrote the manga Scat Dance, which also was also adapted into an anime. And Astra Lost in Space was produced by Studio Lerche. John mentioned them in our previous episode when talking about Given, so I won't repeat their credits again, but they did a really solid job on this show. The animation has no real extravagant Sakuga moments, but it also never feels pale or phoned in. In general, the show has a surprisingly colorful look to it, considering the subject matter and sometimes very serious tone. The adapted character designs by Keiko Kurosawa, who also did the character designs for Asobi Asobase and Scum's Wish, among other things, and which are pretty damn close to the original manga, stand out and are really cool and distinct. The different planets the crew of the Astra gets to visit are also quite varied and sometimes quite beautiful to look at. So yeah, this is definitely a good-looking show overall, in my opinion. I don't know, John, do you agree, or was there something sticking out to you that was like, that didn't look so good?
Oh yeah, definitely. This is a very visually interesting show to watch.
Yeah. The director is Masaomi Ando, who also directed Hakume and Mikuchi and Scum's Wish. And direction-wise, the show does a lot of little things that improve the overall experience. First of all, the show has probably the best pacing I have seen in an anime in quite a while. Like, every episode has just enough interesting plot stuff happen that you are kept constantly engaged in the story, but almost never so much that it would fall short of important character development and moments. And I mean, you can maybe / probably attribute that to the source material, but then again, some anime adaptations cut or add too much stuff to make the story fit into a standard season runtime. And the anime for Astra does none of that. Judging from what I've read, it covers the manga pretty much beat by beat. And when the anime version needed a bit of extra time to fit all of the manga chapter into any given episode, they just cut out the OP or ED, which is a great way of gaining a bit more freedom and extra time when trying to stay faithful to the pacing of the original manga without taking out any good character beats or moments of comedic levity. And this show is also the very definition of cliffhanger hell.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every episode ends with a stunning new plot revelation that lets you go, wait, what the fuck? And then it ends. Now, this won't be as effective if you get to binge the show, which all of you now probably will be able to do if you haven't seen it yet. But when you have to wait a week for that cliffhanger to maybe get a resolution, it's torture. But it also helps, like, you staying invested, and those cliffhangers never feel cheap or come totally out of nowhere. There's almost always a slight build up to them, and they all make sense in context of the bigger story. So I never felt like we were served contrived bullshit just put in there at the last second of the episode to string the viewers along. I don't know, John, how did you feel about the plethora of cliffhangers?
I mean, they were able to keep it, like, consistently tense with these little bits of details, and they sort of breadcrumb you along at the end of the episode, and you're like, and I know I was like, wait, what do you mean I have to wait a week to find out what that means? I want to know now.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This show got me good, man.
Yeah, definitely. The anime also does something really interesting with its aspect ratio. Most of the series is shot in a cinematic 21:9-ish aspect ratio, which means on a normal 60:9 TV, you will see black bars at the top and bottom of the screen. But in certain scenes in the show, the aspect ratio changes to standard 60:9, and the black bars just slowly fade out of the picture, which is a surprisingly potent visual effect that really emphasizes the emotional language or impact of the scenes it's used in. For example, it is often used to effectively convey the vastness and emptiness of open space. There are some really important character moments underlined by great music that also really benefit from the fields of view just suddenly becoming much bigger. It's really cool, and I don't feel like I've seen many series that use a constant shift in aspect ratio that effectively. Have you, John? Can you remember
Not that
anything?
I can think of.
Yeah, it was pretty. It felt kind of unique. I mean, I guess there are some series that do stuff with, I don't know, with stuff that is set in the past and flashbacks, and I don't know, maybe put it in black and white, and put some distortion in the side, or put it in 4:3 or stuff like that. That doesn't really happen in this show, but just this trick with the 16:9 or 21:9 aspect ratio changing is just something really cool, unique. I wasn't aware of before. If other shows have done that, please, listeners, correct me. But I don't remember having ever seen that, at least not in anime. And yeah, cool shit. It's kind of a reverse Cinemax, I guess. Not Cinemax, a reverse IMAX stuff thing. But yeah, cool idea. Now, good pacing and direction go a long way to make a story work, but maybe the most integral part are the characters. And Astra has one of the most endearing, sympathetic, and engaging cast I can think of. Yes, most of them are archetypes, but they are realized incredibly well, and almost all of them have at least one big character moment that makes their development emotionally rewarding. So we got Kanata, who is like the headstrong, athletic dude, bit of a bonehead, but smart enough that he quickly ascends to the position of group leader. Only when it comes to romance and stuff like that, he's a bit of an idiot. Just, not seeing obvious signals from certain other people in the crew. We got Arias, who I was a bit worried about in the very beginning, because the show starts with her as the point of view character, and she feels a lot like the ditzy airhead character who often gets used in other shows as the comedic relief and fan service fodder without adding much to the show aside from, let's be friends, y'all. But there's definitely more to Arias than that in this show, thankfully. So I really liked her. We have Zack, who is the smart tech guy and pilot of the ship, who comes across as kind of cold and very straightforward and a bit unnerving in the beginning. But he's actually a sweetheart and is the focus of probably the funniest scene in the show. Yeah, there's one that relates to his relationship to another character, and I like that scene quite a lot. Like
The scene was really good.
Yes, the reaction of the other characters to that, to his and what he is saying and stuff like that. That had me laughing a lot. We have Kittery, who is the doctor and starts off as the whiny, loud tsundere character, but that gets dialed back very quickly, and she becomes pretty sympathetic like the rest of the crew. There's Funika, who is Kittery's sister, with that weird hand puppet of hers that helps her verbalize her more, I guess, adult and blunt thoughts. Her hand puppet is a lot meaner than her, I guess, but that's also her, so yeah. She initially seems like she will be just like the cute kid mascot character of the group, but there's also more to her than that. We have Luca, who is a very talented engineer and does most of the ship's repairs, but also builds some survival gizmos for the group. He also has a very lighthearted attitude and loves to take verbal jabs at people, so he's a pretty fun character. There's Ulgar, who is very antisocial and broody, and initially does not get along with the rest of the crew at all. And you immediately wonder what his deal is, and, well, we get to learn that, so don't you worry. We have Hyunhwa, who is this very tall, but also very quiet, shy, introverted, and pretty clumsy girl, who from the get-go gives off heavy depression vibes. So naturally, her big character moment is one of the most emotionally rewarding scenes in the show, especially in terms of its presentation. Mm. And last but not least, there's Charles, who is the super handsome guy with a weird laugh. He's also a botanist and obsessed with everything new he finds on every new planet the gang travels to. So also a lot of the comedy is channeled through him. And there's also another member that gets added to the group later, Paulina, but in all honesty, she is more of an exposition piece to move the plot forward than anything else, which was a bit disappointing. Her story doesn't really figure into the overarching plot connecting the other characters. She just has her own reasons to get back to their home planet, and I honestly forgot she was even there most of the time. She's really not that important, aside from, telling us stuff that the other characters and we don't know at that point.
I mean, she comes in kind of late and she's just sort of there.
Yeah. So like I already alluded to in the plot summary, these kids or young adults want to go to space camp, get suddenly transported to deep space by a weird glowing orb, and after getting their hands on a ship that is thankfully drifting in space around the area they get transported to, they make plans to return home. And in the beginning, it seems like this will be the whole show. They find a nameplate on the ship that reads Per Aspera ad Astra, which means through hardships to the stars, and thus name the ship Astra. They have to learn to work together, to trust each other, to become not only friends and a functioning crew, but also a makeshift family with tight bonds that helps them to survive. They travel to a bunch of planets that make up their best route home and learn how to cultivate food and other resources in order to survive. Of course, since they know nothing about these planets, those house a bunch of secrets and dangers that might very well kill them, or at least end their journey right there. So that alone is already thrilling, because just like them, you have no idea what awaits them on the next planet, and if the next stop on their journey might be their last. But that is not the only thing happening in this show. Like, very quickly, some of the characters realize that there's more to their disappearance, and there might be a traitor at work here with an unknown motive. And then we get an episode where the story shows us the perspective of their parents back home who are looking for them. And almost all of their parents, except for Arya's mom, seem to be total assholes. And you are wondering, what the hell is up with that? And this is where all the cliffhangers are coming in, because all the stuff I just mentioned is part of a bigger, quite riveting sci-fi plot that has a bunch of surprises and revelations in store for you during the course of the series. And I thought that plot was super engaging. How did you feel about that, John?
I thought it was great, man. Like I said before, every episode is just like had the hooks in me. Like the narrative in this series is really gripping, because when you start to realize, there's possibly a traitor in the ranks, and you think it's one character, but then you think it's possibly someone else, and then maybe it's like the they sort of shift that mystery around a little bit, and it keeps it interesting, as well as, the story back on the home planet with the parents, and you wonder what the hell their deal is. So when it comes to light, you realize that these are not good people.
Yeah. It strings you along pretty effectively. And, there's you basically always get fed like a small answer to a question you were having before, and then, new mystery. That's how mystery box shows work. And it's pretty good. It doesn't keep most of its big mysteries to its heart as long as Attack on Titan. I mean, it's a much longer show, to be honest, but still, it's like, hey, here's a burning question that makes up the cliffhanger for the end of this episode, and in the next episode that gets answered, and then we got a new question, and then in the episode after that gets answered. So it's, you don't linger on a question or on a mystery too long to make it frustrating and losing, focus of the main plot or whatever. And it's pretty effective. It's pretty well executed. And I really don't want to say anything more about it than that in terms of its plot, because while it's one of those mystery box shows that still works if you know all the plot reveals and secrets behind the characters regardless, it's so much more effective if you experience all of that firsthand. But let's just say a lot of the crew's journey is about self-discovery and breaking free from the chains or image society or your parents or whoever forces on you, and eventually becoming someone you choose to be for yourself. And how the people who are your true friends and true family can help you become that person. And I found a lot of that to be incredibly emotionally resonant and rewarding. Did you feel the same, John?
Oh yeah, definitely. Just all of these moments of, the characters being unsure of themselves, but getting the encouragement that they need from everyone else around them was definitely like it helped strengthen that point to become your own person, and to that there are people in your life that you can rely on, because up to that point it's kind of shown that, hey, a lot of these kids don't have a good role model or a close friend. So the fact that the circumstance that they have to endure kind of helps bring them together, makes their development and their discoveries a lot more poignant.
Yes, definitely. And it also, considering, the later developments of the show, both makes all of that more tense and harrowing, because they form really tight bonds. But if you have in the back of your head, hey, there's still a traitor among that group, like, what is gonna happen? Like, is that family gonna break apart because of that stuff? What is ultimately gonna happen, and who is it, and why, and what is the reason for this, and will the bond stay firm? Will they survive this? So that's all very engaging. Another surprisingly great aspect of the show is the comedy, in my opinion. Comedy is always a point of contention in plot-driven shows, in my opinion, because its effectiveness in general is a very subjective thing. A lot of people find things funny that others don't, and vice versa, so many of our listeners and future viewers of the show might disagree with me here, but I found the comedy in this show incredibly funny. I thought it was really clever at times, it made the characters more sympathetic and was tailored to the different attitude and behavior of each crew member, which means it was also pretty varied. There's a lot of good physical humor as well, and the most important thing is it never feels really misplaced or overbearing. For example, I had a big problem with the comedy in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. You have these big dramatic moments and fight scenes, and then suddenly the show decides this would be the best scene to do a stupid joke about Ed being small and him overreacting to that, which completely killed the tension for me in a lot of scenes in the beginning of that show. They dial that back later, but it's still one of the best examples of badly used comedy, detracting from a great show I can think of. And Astra never does that. It is very intent on giving you a lot of levity in between, but when shit needs to be tense, it will be fucking tense. And when the comedy happens, it never feels lazy or one note. So I really liked that. How did you feel about the comedy, John?
I feel like it was used as an effective tension reliever for both the viewer and the characters, because they're in this like super scary, harrowing situation. So, sometimes you gotta laugh in order to feel better and get through, your predicaments. So, yeah, I feel like it was used, incredibly effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And then overall, the experience with the show was just very, like, super entertaining. Like, you have the thrilling aspects, you have the comedic aspects, you have the great character moments, and just there's a lot of interesting stuff to see when you get to the different planets. All the characters have different skills. Naturally, that's what I meant by archetype. You had the more athletic type, you had the more, scientifically gifted guy, and, each of them has a special set of skills that comes into play at some point in the show. Some are more important than others. Some are more on the emotional side and bring the characters together. Their skill being empathy, I guess, in a kind of way. And others are like, like I said, Zach is the tech guy. Like, he knows how to make this shit like work and how to get the people home most effectively. And then, you got Charles, who can figure out when getting to the planets most easily what each new creature may be. Is it dangerous? Is it a carnivore? Is it a herbivore? Like, what dangers await them on this planet? And, sometimes it takes them some time to figure that out. And yeah, that's most interesting part. Like, you experience these new worlds with these characters for the first time, and is this gonna be a peaceful planet? Is some shit gonna go wrong? And if shit goes wrong, what will go wrong? Like, and how will they get out of this? And yeah, a lot of shows comprised of that, and that's also cool. And once the overarching plot stuff kicks into gear, the focus shifts a bit, and that becomes the most interesting thing. And how all that wraps up is interesting as well. And all the character drama plays into that. And yeah, I just found everything in this show to be super enjoyable and entertaining and engaging. And yeah, man, I really, really like Astra Lost in Space. It was one of the biggest surprise hits for me in not this season, just in the last couple of years. Like, something that wasn't really on my radar, and then just blew me away. And it's a definite contender for best of the season. I can already say that. I don't know if we'll make it to the throne, but yeah, it's up there. And yeah, I fucking love this show. There are only a couple of small nitpick points of critique I would throw at it that didn't quite work for me all the time. Maybe, like you mentioned before, that they shift the hints at who the traitor might be around, that makes you, maybe it might be this guy, maybe it might be this guy. And that's true, they drop a lot of red herring things, but some are more effective than others. And, there's some characters that it's gotta be one of those. Like, maybe narrow it down to maybe 3 characters or something, or 2. It's like, the traitor's gonna be one of them. Because they're either the most conspicuous or the least conspicuous. And it's usually, if you've seen enough procedurals or stuff like that, I guess, which is my burden and my balls and shade. But yeah, it's usually one of those characters. The one you expected to be the most and the one you least expected. So, and yeah, in my opinion, the reveal of the traitor fell a bit flat. At least for me it did, since they don't want to give away if it was a man or a woman. So I'm going to say but they were the most suspicious for me in the first place. But since they have become a likable character in their own right at that point, it's still emotionally engaging, because you wonder what the fallout of this situation will be. So it's not that problematic. Like, it's like, okay, I kind of expected them to be the traitor, but it's fine. Like, it's okay. I just want to know why at this point, right? I want to know what's the reason, what's the motivation behind all of this, and that stuff, like the revelation of the motives and that was really interesting. So, and what resulted from that. So it's not that big of this. It's a nitpick. It's just like, okay, maybe some of that could have been obfuscated a bit better, I guess, or more effectively. But then again, you probably would have needed a bit more runtime for that to sow some, I guess, more convincing seeds of, mistrust and for the other characters, which didn't work that well for me. But it was never really a problem. Like I said, it's a nitpick. The reveal of the final secrets of this story is quite an exposition dump.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, here, this happened, this happened, this, and this, and this, which might put off some people. But in my opinion, it's presented well enough and is interesting enough to make that bearable. I prefer show over tell, but at least this is show and tell at the same time. So I guess it's fine. I don't know, were you like me, this is a bit too much talking, why don't you just show us what happened?
I mean, it was interesting. I guess I just thought it was a bit like odd that, this was how they were trying to explain away what was happening, but it it made sense.
Yeah.
But
Just
just trying to get to that point was a little circuitous, I guess you could say. I don't.
okay, yeah, sure. In general, there's like you could if they had like 1 or 2 episodes, they could have maybe shown that and let us draw our own conclusion instead of having one character tell the whole shit. So I don't know, but it's fine. Like it doesn't ruin the show or anything. It's like, okay, you just see, okay, there's one thing they could have done better here, and there's no big action climax or anything at the end. At the end of the show. And the ending feels a bit rushed, like I mentioned before. Maybe they could have used like 1 or 2 episodes, but then again, apparently in the manga, the ending is rushed as well. It's basically it's the same ending, so it's just like it was written that way, and they copy pasted that kind of. So I guess they could have maybe tried to change that up a bit for the anime, but then they should have maybe needed to go like 13 or 14 episodes. And maybe that wasn't possible, or they didn't want to do that and wanted to stay as faithful to the source material as possible, which is fine too. I just feel like, the ending comes a bit like, okay, they hand wave a lot of possible conflicts and story beats. There's literally the line, a lot of stuff happened, and then even more stuff happened, and a bunch of stuff happened, and then we're at this point. Like that's a direct quote. It's like, hey, we're not going to talk about all that shit because we think that's not interesting enough. It's like, okay, sure, but you're also like glossing over things that went a bit too smoothly. If you think about that, and I would like to know why they went so smoothly. So, all right, sure. But again, a nitpick. Like that's not something that will pull you out of the show. At least it didn't for me. Apparently it didn't for John. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. Could have maybe handled that a bit better. But then again, that would have been a longer story. Would have needed more episodes, and maybe that would have dragged and slowed down the show and maybe ruined the pacing a bit. So as it is, the ending is just a nice, you get a nice epilogue for all the characters. It's like, hey, this is how that wraps up, and that wraps up, and that wraps up. And it's like, okay, maybe I would have liked to see them spend more time on that, but it's not that necessary. It's fine as it is. Room for improvement, sure, but I was not unsatisfied with this ending. Like I said, regardless, I think this is still one of the most emotionally rewarding anime endings I can think of, especially considering how little actual time we spent with those people. Just in terms of net runtime and net screen time, and the cast not being just 2 people or something. It's a group of people. And yeah, in general, it's probably one of the most satisfying endings to an anime I've ever seen. Like, just considering that these characters like endear themselves very quickly to you, and you want these kids to survive, and you want these kids to succeed and become the people they want to become. And yeah, and I'm really happy with how the show wrapped up. There are some bittersweet notes here and there, sure, but overall, it's a really good ending in my opinion. Did you feel the same, John?
Yeah, I mean, the emotional payoff for pretty much everything was super, super, super good. So I'm glad, I'm glad everything, ended the way it did. We got to see every character and, what they're doing now, what's happening, that sort of, big epilogue at the end of the final episode. And yeah, I mean, all of the plot threads were wrapped up, maybe not super cleanly, but it was good enough for me to say, yeah, it was good ending.
Yeah, definitely. And aside from the few things that I mentioned before, and that there's not really anything I took any issue with at all. Like, all the characters are, like I said, relatable and don't act like idiots, which is a very nice change of pace from, compared to other anime, which I was watching Karakuri at the circus at the same time, so Astra Lost in Space was an effective antidote for that. It's like, Jesus Christ, all these characters are fucking idiots, and then I watch Astra and like, oh my god, intelligent people, thank you! And so, well, I mean, Kanata is an oblivious ape when it comes to Aria's feelings towards him, but you can't have everything, so it's fine. It's like, these characters are cool and smart and funny and likable, and yeah. I love them all, and I love this show, and it's streaming on Funimation and Hulu. If you want to check it out, please do that. And yeah, Astra Lost in Space is definitely one of the most consistently engaging, tightly written, and directed anime I've ever seen. It uses its short runtime super effectively. It gets the most of its out of its archetypical characters. It offers surprises, dramatic reveals, and great character moments in spades. And it was just an incredibly fun time from beginning to end. If you love well-paced, equally plot and character-focused science fiction or space adventure shows, this will be totally up your alley. You should definitely not skip it. John, any final words?
Per aspera ad astra.
I can't add anything more to that than a resounding "ah yeah!"
And now, to round us all out, is Symphogear XV. We made it. We made it, fam. We made it to the final season.
We're finally there.
What we believe to be the final season.
It feels like the final season, dude. Like,
from
beginning to end.
I mean, I say that because there is this interview with one of the show's co-creators, Noriyasu Agematsu, on this Japanese show Anasong Station. You can watch this clip on Crunchyroll, actually, where he says, yeah, we went into the show with the mindset that every season was going to be the final season.
Oh, I would have not liked if fucking AXC would have been the final season. That would have been a bummer.
Oh, yeah, it would have. But XV happened, and oh boy. It was, okay, all right. Okay, let's talk about the plot overview first before I start losing my fucking mind.
Collect yourself, John.
Yes. So after the defeat of Adam Weishaupt of the Bavarian Illuminati, it would seem that the world has returned to peace. Or it would have until one day when a Song research vessel is under attack in the heart of Antarctica, and the Symphogear team has to leap into action. There they encounter a giant coffin in the shape of a penguin on the rampage. After dispatching it, they find within it the mummified corpse of that which is possibly a custodian, wearing a peculiar golden armlet. And as it turns out, a group of women who are the remnants of the Bavarian Illuminati, calling themselves Noble Red, are on the hunt. But what is their goal, and what is this armlet's purpose? There's only more mysteries for our girls to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy.
Also, heads up for people, this is going to be, of course, a full spoiler review. I forgot to mention that before. But since this is the 5th season of a show we already talked about, beware of spoilers, everyone. Continue, John.
So, I mean, we've talked about how Symphogear is the brainchild of Noriyasu Agematsu, who's a big musician, has done a lot of video games and other shows. And one Akifumi Kaneko, who's worked on, a series of games you may have heard of called Wild Arms, and that's one thing I'd like to touch on first. So, Noble Red. In Wild Arms, there is a type of vampire called Crimson Nobles.
Mm-hmm. The general Noble Red has like this classic monster theme going for them in this show.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Milaker's a vampire, Elsa is the werewolf, and Vanessa the cyborg robot Frankenstein, I guess, with a cool 60s/70s aesthetic.
Yeah, like a fusion of what's that one robot from Mazinger, Aphrodite?
I guess. Yeah, it tit torpedoes included, actually. So
Yes, that's exactly.
yeah, I really just continue with them as villains. I mean, what did you think about them, John? I really liked the villain trio this time around. While the Bavarian Illuminati and XZ were quite disappointment in my opinion, just in terms of what they did and everything and being engaging villains. I think this was like the complete opposite. I thought Noble Red was really cool. They were very, like, from the get-go, they seem very desperate and are not always a step ahead of Song. They're quite ruthless, though. So I do love a lot of evil shit, but you always feel like they are struggling and they have a very clear goal in mind and what they want to do, and they want to keep their makeshift family together, which made them pretty relatable. Probably after Carol, the most relatable villain in this show, I guess.
Yeah, because coming off of Saint-Germain, Prelati, Cagliostro, Adam, and Tiki, like the three alchemist girls, they're all right, I guess. They probably could have been a lot more interesting if they didn't have Adam leading them around. Because Adam just turned out to be, and I said this during a sneak preview, he turned out to be, I am strong because I am strong, and I do strong things because I am strong. Watch me be strong. It's like, great, dude. All right, cool, awesome. And he just was the rogues gallery of AXZ was not super compelling. And then we come to XV with Noble Red, and like you said, they feel like they've had some sort of relationship for a long time, like maybe not quite like family, but close to it. Like they're banding together. Their whole, they are clinging together the best they can, because they're not nearly as strong or as capable as most of the villains that have come before them in the past 4 seasons, which I feel like, just portraying them as being a lot more vulnerable made them a lot more interesting and a lot more just like relatable, and
And you can sympathize with their goal, like what they're trying to do, them being turned to monsters and stuff like that, and wanting to escape that grabs, kind of only wanting to live a normal life. Even that is a very slim hope. But, trying to get there and sticking together, and actually it's not like every one of them has their own motives. Like, it feels like they are a unit, and that's what I meant by being a family. Like, they are you feel like they're very important to each other, or have become very important to each other. They're trying to help each other when in dire need and stuff like that. And that's a kind of nice change of pace from the previous villains. Well, you could argue that Maria and the 2 other girls from G were also a family, but they also became part of the team, and this this feels a bit different.
I mean, going back and rewatching everything before XV because I had to hype myself up. I feel like in G, Maria, Shirabe, and Kirika had a complete arc, and it worked really well. I don't know if I'd call Noble. I guess Noble Red. They have a complete arc as well, and it resolves in a different way. I mean, make no mistake, Noble Red have done a lot of bad things to a lot of people. So they get their comeuppance, but you also sort of feel, or I anyway, sort of felt like, I sort of wish, they had a different ending, but at the same time,
I feel a bit sorry for them.
Yeah, I felt a bit sorry for them, but it was also like, they also kind of deserved what they got when you really think about it.
They're tragic villains. Like, they're like the typical villain type where, these people have done horrible things, but they kind of were driven to it, and you can understand that, but, they still need to pay for what they've done. And I mean, ultimately they do. Like, they all die.
Oops.
And their scent of, like, felt a bit, I don't want to call it lackluster, but I was expecting like each of them getting their big final standoff moment, and we get like kind of final fights for each of them, but not all of them feel like they are this hallmark moment for that character. It feels like most of them felt like, oh, this is another fight, and they're giving it their all, sure, but it doesn't wrap up in a way where it's like, no, now this character dies, no, this character dies, no, they survive and then they all die together by sacrificing themselves to help the crew. And it's like, okay, maybe, you know, their stuff and their sacrifice would have resonated more strongly if it were like a separate thing and they had their own, I don't know, connection or relation to some of the gear users. In the way they're like, hey, there's some, I don't know, some character connective tissues between the characters here with how they see the world or stuff like that. The show doesn't really do that. They just concentrate on them having like this family motif or being like this tight group that tries to change their destiny or their fate or whatever, and they don't like really connect it that heavily to the group of gear users. Like Noble Red is mostly just there to drive the plot forward and to antagonize the gear users and maybe let them make mistake. Like especially in the case of Tsubasa, where like Milog attacks the concert that she's performing with Maria and just basically drives her into a very desperate state, which also becomes kind of important to the plot later on because Tsubasa kind of loses it there for a while.
Yeah, this before I get to that point, there's a moment where the girls achieve a new power-up called Amalgam, and it's because of the spirits of the old Bavarian Illuminati appear to them, and I don't know if that feels particularly earned. But
yeah, it felt like, okay, we gotta have a power-up here.
But, you know, it was cool, I guess.
Yeah,
the
sure.
end result was.
Hey, if we can agree on one thing, everything in this fucking show is cool. Like, holy shit, Symphogear. Like, if you want some cool shit to look at, this is the fucking franchise for you. And fucking XV is no exception. Quite the contrary, actually.
I mean, this show was originally supposed to air in the spring, but it aired in summer instead. And it's like, good that you delayed it because you made it look even better than it was.
I wonder, is this the best looking season of Symphogear? It might be. I'm not sure.
I feel like it probably is. It might be up there with like G or GX, but this is definitely at the top.
Yeah. I think, you know,
because it's also weird because going back and rewatching the shows, there was another studio that co-produced the first season, and then from there on out, it was solely Satellite. Or Satellite were the sole, like, main producer of the show, I should say. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, probably. It felt to me like this season was just, maybe that was because of the story feeling so climactic in parts where it's like, hey, okay, we have all these callbacks to the previous seasons. Like, really, there are a bunch of callbacks. Like I said, full spoilers, people, fucking Carol is coming back. And that moment
was so good.
Holy fucking shit. I mean, to be fair, Elf 9, like in her small body form and then wearing the dress of Carol that she wears in her adult form looks a bit too big. But still, the moment when she transformed and that her fucking theme, like, just blasting through my speakers, I lost my shit. I was like, holy fuck, it's Carol! Fuck!
When the auto score reappeared and then Carol comes back. There's this one guy I'm going to shout out that I follow on Twitter named Onika. He can't shut the fuck up about Symphogear either, and he's generally a really sweet guy. When that episode aired, he took a screen cap from the last Smash Brothers Ultimate trailer. You know the one that said everyone is here.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's this episode.
Yeah. It's
That's
true.
This whole series,
definitely, but especially this season, like you mentioned, the stuff from the Bavarian Illuminati, appears again. Adam Weishaupt, we finally, like you said, he was already mentioned before, but this is the legacy of that, and what his reasoning for that for his shit was also comes into play. And then we get to learn all the stuff with the custodians that were mentioned from the beginning. Like all of that shit gets wrapped up in this season. Like all of that shit happens.
And we learn just how much of an asshole Fudo is.
Oh, I mean, we knew before. But
we didn't know to this extent.
Yeah, he becomes like the ultimate piece of shit. And I mean, that results in some pretty cool stuff, like fight-wise. But yeah, Tsubasa's grandfather / father, it's a thing.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's still a giant piece of shit. And sadly, Tsubasa lets her grandfather's words and what happened at the concert get to her way too much. So she gets super driven and makes bad decisions. She's trying to shoulder the entire responsibility for all of that shit that happens in the season by her own, which of course that never works. You should know better, girl, but you know.
I felt so bad for Tsubasa all throughout this whole season. I just wanted to jump into the screen and be like, stop bullying her.
Yeah.
Stop.
I felt really sorry for her too. And I mean, the other characters try their darndest to bring her like back into the fold and make her see that, you know, you don't have to do this on your own. Please don't. This won't work out. But you know, she has a difficult legacy and a difficult relationship to her family and shit like that, and that can weigh on you. And I really liked. Considering who Chris was in season 1, I think it's kind of funny and very cool that she has become the steady voice of reason in the team. Yeah. And that, you know, that she has like the most words of wisdom in this season and in some of the previous seasons too, but especially in this one. It's like, hey, you were the asshole in the first season, kinda. And
her and Maria really became like the team moms.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's great. And hey, fucking consistent character development in this which is kind of just a dumb action show. So, I mean, but you know, this shows how much Symphogear has to offer beneath all of the good-looking action. And there's so much amazing fucking shit. Like I mentioned, Carol coming back and that fucking transformer and that ensuing fight and of course the final fight and stuff like that. Although I still think the final fight of GX was probably the best one. And, you know, it's different fight against Noble Red. And, you know, probably the coolest fights in Noble Red go, in my opinion, to Vanessa. Because, like, she has just a cool way of fighting with a lot of tricks in her arsenal. And, like I said, I love her design, which is very, very 70s, 80s. So, you know, but also Millark and Elsa, like using their weird science fiction fantasy powers to the utmost effect. Like all of that stuff is visually creative and cool and interesting to look at. And it's just, there's so much impact in those fight scenes and so much. And man, the new transformations. Holy shit.
Someone pointed out that with Hibiki's transformations, a lot of the animations were kind of similar to some of Nero's Devil Breaker stuff in Devil May Cry 5. Wouldn't you know that Shoji Kawamori did Devil Breaker design for the game? And Satellite is Kawamori's studio?
That works. So, John, if you're on that topic, best transformation in this season. Go.
I mean, oh God, why do you do this to me? Probably. Oh no, I can't. You're making me pick one out of six.
Yes, out of all of your children, you need to pick one. The others die.
Oh no, the stakes are higher than I thought. Oh gee, you tell me what yours is. I'm still thinking about it.
It's tough. I think in terms of just the coolest one is Hibiki's because of all the fucking martial arts shit that she does, like the kata, just looks so fucking great. But you know, the sexiest is probably Kirika's, like the pole dancing stuff. I read
really that like one of the guys working on the animation for that threw out so many drafts of that and cut down so much of it, and it still turned out the way he did, and he was like, fuck it, whatever.
It's really good, though.
It is.
Yeah, it's really good looking stuff. And Chris is great too. I mean, you have to laugh at that. Her just fucking just having the fucking bullet between her tits and just fucking pressing them together. Then the bullet gets thrown up into the air and she loads it into the gun. It's so fucking ridiculous. Well, it looks good. Goddamn.
And a throwback to the bang from one of her previous transformations.
It's perfect. And fucking Shirobe having this ice skater thing going on, and yeah, it's just...
I mean, it's cool Yuri stuff. On ice, pun absolutely intended.
Yeah, definitely. You still haven't told me your favorite, though, John. Shit. You have to decide now. You can't get out of this.
I mean, God, Maria's was cool, too. Dancing around with her chain whip sword. And I mean, there's a little bit of lewdness in that one, too, kind of binding herself a bit. It was weird, but that's fine. I'm trying to remember Tsubasa's clearly.
That was probably the weakest in my opinion. I mean, it's not bad, but she's like cutting the candles, I think, or stuff like that, cutting the fire out, and then that transforms her. It was just not, in my opinion, as visually impressive as the other ones. It was not as it doesn't have that many like quick animated scenes as many quick animated scenes as the other ones. It had more of a subdued feel to it. Yeah, so
I guess I'll give it to Kirika because hers is probably the most striking because reasons.
Yeah. It's a thing. If you like legs.
Legs and tights and Jesus Christ.
Yes.
But no, they're all really cool in different ways. So, you know, making me pick.
Yes.
So there you go. That's my pick. Screw it.
Kirika. All right. I'm totally fine with that. Like I said, it was one of my two. If I, either go with best looking or coolest, I don't know. But yeah, those are great. And I don't want to call it the best looking thing in the show, but a lot of effort was put into these transformations. And they're the best looking yet. Like the transformation look the best they have ever looked. And it's really cool that like them showing parts of the gear and then showing the name of the Symphogear and activating and shit like that. Like a bunch of little cool details in those transformation sequences, and you get to see at least, I think every transformation sequence at least twice through the course of the season. So that's cool. And yeah, I really liked it. And yeah, man, I also think, this was probably one of the funniest seasons. Like, there was so much ridiculous shit in there, like noise on segways, ninja cars, the scene with Kirika and Shirobe in the park.
Yes, that was one of my favorites. Oh, what are the chances of someone attacking this particular hospital and they look up and they see Millark in the shadow of the moon, and their reaction is great. And when Chris and who was it, Maria? I don't remember. Like when they land on the hood of the car and the guy in the car is yelling, "Show me the end of the world!" while looking at Chris's butt. That was also fucking great. I don't know, it was such a fucking random weird scene, and I had to laugh really hard at that. Like, okay, the end of the world. I get it. Okay, but anyway, yeah, that was really, really fun stuff. Like, really well executed, and the pacing in this season is great too. Like in Astra, you got a lot of good cliffhangers, and speaking of fights again, and fucking Tsubasa's asshole dad/grandfather, the Kazanari Battle Royale was amazing. Yeah, dude,
with that sick ass Izuna drop included. Like, holy shit. That was really cool stuff by people like fighting, like at least some of them fighting without gear assistance. Man, goddamn, good stuff. And, like I said, the ninja car stuff, Ogawa being a badass.
Oh my god, I forgot the ninja car. Oh my god.
Yeah. Goddamn. It's so good. It's so dumb, but it's also so good.
I mean, this show revels in how absurdly over the top it is, and it's great.
Yeah. I had a really fun time all the way through. The ending, just like with Astra Lost in Space, felt a bit rushed.
Yeah, I mean,
Would you agree?
there were a lot of people on Twitter who were like, "Oh man, that ending was great," and I didn't want to be too openly vocal about it, but I was like, I felt like it was just
One more episode.
a little weak. Maybe one more because 3/4 of the last episode is the last fight with Shemha, and like the descending back into the atmosphere, which is dope. You have that throwback to the subtitle of the first season.
Mm.
The punch heard round the world when Hibiki punches out Vanessa. Oh my god, the animation on that was that was nuts.
Yes, that was really great.
And then you get to them stealing up Yggdrasil, and then it's just kind of over.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you see them at there's a scene where they're all at Yashiro's grave, paying their respects. That's like, oh, okay. Spoilers, Yashiro dies, by the way. It's really unfortunate, and it sends Tsubasa into a rage. Stop bullying her. And then we get this, last final scene with a kind of a non-confession between Hibiki and Miku. Just let them be gay on screen. It doesn't matter. It's fine. We already know that. Because Hibiki has said that Miku is, and I quote, her sunshine. We have the voice actresses Aoi Yuki and Yuka Iguchi saying, yeah, no, they're gay. Yes, totally. And there's a scene towards the end of the series when Hibiki is trying to save Miku from the clutches of Shemha. She doesn't say, I want to save her or I want to rescue her. No, it's, I want to take Miku for myself. Yeah. Okay. Yes. You've all been spelled it out, completely spelled it out for us. So I really wanted that moment to be there, and they just, they had this strong enough implication to be like, yeah, you know how they feel about each other, but it's like I wanted it to be on screen, and I was hoping
Same for me.
And I was hoping there'd be a little more of a bust out my fancy film terms, a little bit more of a denouement than there was. But
yeah, definitely. I have a problem with that, with shows not fully committing to, their queer characters' relationships. But I can see past that in Symphogear because,
there's enough subtext that it's no longer subtext.
Yeah. Well, that's in other shows too. No, but that because that's not the sole focus of the show. Like for me, one of the big focuses is the action stuff, and all the crazy things happening around that. If this was a pure romance show where it's like, hey, you have these, gay characters, and they don't really fully commit, like in Yuri on Ice, I guess, and in some other shows, it was like, okay, this is annoying. But here it's like, okay, you could fucking say it, but okay, if you don't want to because you want to keep your characters like. You want to keep the because this is a Yuri show, but it's not necessarily a Yuri show for people who are really into Yuri, but it's more for people who want to look at sexy girls fighting, I guess, and the Yuri stuff is a side thing. So maybe they want to keep some of the characters pristine, and even if you're straight, maybe you could have these characters fall for you, like for some of the uber nerds. I don't know. I don't know what's the reason behind this.
Can we also talk about the fact that the Shenshojin Faust robe was a fucking wedding dress too?
Yeah, well, there you go.
I mean, look at it.
Yes, it's all in there. It's just like the show is not, or maybe they can't. I don't know. Like I said, maybe different time slots. I don't know what the reason for this is, but why they don't want to fully commit to this. But yeah, it's so obvious. If you're a bit bothered by that like me, then yeah, even then you can probably see past it. I could in this show. But it's like, okay, it's still you were just wondering why. Why can't you just fucking come out and say it? But just say it.
They share a bed throughout the whole series.
Yeah. It's like, it's fucking Shirabe and Kirika, and to an extent Maria and Tsubasa. The only one out of that thing is Chris, I would say. Like, she's the only non-Yuri character in this. And, you could argue Maria and Tsubasa are just friends, but, there's something going on there as well. But the other two groups, like Miku and Hibiki and fucking Kirika and Shirobue, those are lesbians. Come on, guys. Like,
Turbo gay.
Turbo gay, like Symphogear. I think I'm going to call this the episode then. That's pretty good.
Oh my god.
But yeah. But anyway, like, aside from that nitpick and the ending being like the final fight being not as satisfying as it could be, because it's just like, okay, this happens. Like, Hibiki powers up one more time, and then that's kind of that.
Yeah.
And I felt like the best final fight was still Carol and GX, because that felt like a real climactic final fight with real high stakes. And there were high stakes in XV at the end. But, they, at that point where the final fight happens, you already feel like the characters have already won, and there's not like this struggle anymore. It's like, okay, it's only about how fast can Hibiki punch Shenhua out of existence. And that's kind of it. And it's, yeah.
I saw some people talk about this, and I didn't really think about it while watching the show. And maybe you could kind of apply this to like any of the seasons, but I feel like there's a missed opportunity in not letting Kanade appear to Hibiki in some way, like through a vision or through like a dream or something, because she's using her gear since the start of the series, and I feel like this would have been a great payoff for that sort of thing. I mean, we see glimpses of characters who have passed on during the final sequence, and it's like, okay, but
I mean,
a little bit more.
Kanade is there, like, for Tsubasa, but not for Hibiki.
Yeah.
And they even make a callback to Fine and fucking Dr. Ver, and of course.
Yes!
So which was great. But yeah, you're right. Like, it feels like there should have been a final scene, because that's how the show started, where it's like, Kanade maybe, like... I think the best thing would have been Hibiki and Tsubasa, because this was also kind of Tsubasa's season, again, and Hibiki's, of course. Them delivering both the final blow to Shenhua, and you have like this moment maybe like where in Advent Children, like Cloud gets like this glimpse of Ares pulling him up and throwing him against the final / against Bahamut, and then Kanade like grabbing the hands of Tsubasa and Hibiki and just throwing them at Shenhua or something like that. That would have been really cool.
Yeah,
that would have been like, hey, here, this is the beginning, this is the end. Like, this is where it all started, with that character and her making that fucking for her fatal decision, but that, being the seed for such a much greater thing, and Hibiki, becoming such a great character. And yeah, that would have been really fulfilling and satisfying. And like you said, it's kind of a missed opportunity, but they can't think of everything, I guess. And they put so much shit in this season. Like, that is so satisfying if you've been following that series from the very beginning. And even Kanade appearing there at all was nice. Like, you could have done it better, sure. But, at least she was there in a capacity. But you're right. That would have been cool. Like, appearing for both those characters in a meaningful way, and maybe giving them, like, the final push to overcome the greatest foe of the series, I guess. There
were other questions I wanted answered too. Like, what was the relationship between Enki and Maria? Because I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's implied that Getlam was probably originally belonged to Enki, and That's why.
Maybe that's all there is to it.
Yeah, because Shemha asks Maria if she's a descendant of Enki, and
Yeah.
I think there's like a flashback where we see Enki using Argatlam, and that's really kind of it. And it's like, oh, I want to know that little detail. But
I mean,
I feel like they probably told us enough. But I want to, I give me more. Do it.
sure. It's like, okay, yeah, it's probably just that she inherited his gear.
Yeah.
And that's that. I mean, Enki is not really that. He's not a developed character or anything. He's like, okay,
No.
he was one of the guys fighting Shemha, or the guy, I guess, and that's it. Maybe if they had a longer season, like if this was a 26 episode, you could have done a whole thing with how they, I don't know, travel back in time and join the fight against Shemha in the past, and then fight her future version or stuff like that. You learn more about Enki, but he was just used as a thing to set up how this all began, kind of.
Mhm.
And we don't really learn where Shemha came from, really. Like, we learn kind of what she is and what she did, like, and the whole stuff with the Curse of Balal and, Babel and everything. And why people can't understand each other. Like, all of that stuff originated there, and, how all of that worked, and that it's kind of ancient computer code nonsense language embedded into the DNA of every human and stuff like that. So, dumb sci-fi shit. But it's not, I don't think it's supposed to be more than that.
We can kind of circle back a little bit to Accelerator from before, because Shemha Mephiresh is one of the hidden names of God in the Kabbalah. So,
yeah,
there you go.
Like yeah, just a god like being responsible for steering the fates of the humans from the shadows, kind of, without being really there for a time, and then we have to fight her for to avoid our extinction. I mean, that has been done before in other shows, like a lot of shows. But this was done okay. Like, Shemha is not that interesting of a villain. Like, Noble Red was much more interesting, and thankfully they have more screen time than Shemha does. Shemha was mostly just interesting because she takes over Miku's body. Okay, now there are stakes. It's not about just beating her; it's about beating her without losing Miku.
Yes, because that was the big. I was like, don't kill Miku, don't do that. That's what I was saying to myself the whole way, and they kind of avoided that, and I was like, yay.
And that's why it's interesting. It's more interesting in G, where Miku also got turned bad, but just that, like, she was brain manipulated, and in this case, we actually have a person controlling her that is responsible for a lot of the shit that happened in this show up to that point, even though we didn't know that. So that makes that work better than when Miku turned evil before, and makes the stakes higher and stuff like that. But still, it's like, you feel like there should have been like this climactic final, like, super final battle where there maybe it feels like all of the characters are dying, and things never get that dire. I felt like it was like, hey, okay, things are getting difficult at this point, but never as fucking crazy and what the fuck and everything. We didn't have the all is lost moment, right? That's what it feels like, or not even a super mindfuck moment. Where was that in G or in GX, where fucking Hibiki loses her arm?
It was G.
G, right? That was
It gets fucking gnawed off by Nephilim.
Yes, so something like that wasn't really in here, not in the final fight. So yeah.
I mean, taking the fight to the moon was also, a foregone conclusion, but it was still dope. And they sort of foreshadowed that, because this was a detail I learned about after. The Daedalus Labyrinth that Vanessa, Millark, and Elsa use, they say that the distance inside it spans over 380,000 kilometers, right? Mm-hmm. Guess how far the moon is from the Earth? 384,400 kilometers.
It's worth paying attention in this show.
Yeah, because
you might not think that.
Someone pointed that that after, and I was like, holy shit, Kaneko!
You bastard! You got us again.
You fucking hoodwinked us. Oh yeah. Um, I don't know how much of a time we want to spend talking about music.
Man, I want to bring it up, like especially in the fucking final episode, the soundtrack, among other things, went into overdrive.
I just want to point out something else that was pointed out to me. So the opening theme, metanoia, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you take those syllables and reverse them? The song name is now I no Tame, for the sake of love.
Oh, god damn it.
Again, someone pointed it out to me, and I was like, fuck, you're right.
Well, yeah, that fits the theme of the show. Like, Symphogear was never a deep show, but it has some good things to say about the importance of wanting to understand each other and learning from experiences and the successes and failures in that endeavor or the successes and failures that endeavor brings with it. So yeah, like that fits, and in the end, all that matters is love and the stuff bringing people together, and that's how you overcome your all adversities. And I mean, that's a very simple message, but it rings true, and it definitely does in this show. Like, that's what this show is about. Like, you know, love conquers all. And that's fine. That's a simple, good message. I can totally deal with that. I'm totally fine with that. And again, that's how this season concludes. And be it maybe not as, I don't know, as like satisfying as and potent and climactic as it could have been, but enough, like good enough, in my opinion. So I was fine with how it used its theme. And hey, speaking of love, even Hibiki's deadbeat dad actually managed to give her good advice this time around. So it was when she is in a run because of Tsubasa, I think it was really cool. So I didn't expect that from him, and I was like, hey, good stuff. Hey, something came from that as well. I'm really happy for you, Hibiki. That's cool shit. That made me happy. So yeah,
your dad wasn't a complete asshole after all. That's good.
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, you know, we make no mistake when, you know, you hear us with all these criticisms about this show, and in particular this season. We still love this show. It's fucking great, and everyone should watch it and experience it and fall in love with the characters and the music and the animation. And
don't get us wrong. Like I mentioned before, this is probably the best looking season of Symphogear, and it's still so incredibly satisfying. There's so much cool shit to look at. It's better than season 4 by a mile, at least.
Like, I am glad that you can now watch the whole series beginning to end on Crunchyroll. They finally licensed out AXZ, you know, instead of us having to turn to certain other methods the last time we talked about it. But, you know, if you want to binge all 65 episodes, they're there.
Yeah, and you should do that. Definitely. Like, fucking watch that show.
Hashtag
from
watch
beginning to end.
Symphogear.
Yeah, hashtag watch Symphogear. Like, I mean, we can't force you, but we can just tell you that you know, if you love your action shows, then you shouldn't miss out on this one, because it's really it's special. It's really creative. It's got a lot of cool shit to look at. Fantastic songs, and it's enjoyable, and it's got a really good and satisfying ending. Like, it could have maybe it could have been better, but considering how long the series ran and how much stuff there was in there, if this is the ending to Symphogear, this is one of the best anime endings I've ever seen. One of the best satisfying ones. Pretty much all the stuff that, you know, gets kinda already set up in season 1, even without you knowing it, gets wrapped up and shit like that. And it's just cool. And the season full of cool callbacks and to earlier seasons. If you watched it beginning to end, it's such a fucking fan treat. It's really good. So, man, don't miss out on this.
It's so weird, too, because this show aired like maybe a year-ish after Madoka. So I feel like it was sort of going to be like one of those flash in the pan, like, oh, we're also trying to capitalize on the tragic magical girl
Yeah.
angle. And then, it sort of went and did its own thing. And then suddenly got a second season, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth. And it was like, all right, you kept the train rolling for 7 years. And it turned out to be, it, this is like, it, after watching all of this has definitely become one of my new like favorite anime of all time. It's definitely a top five.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Maybe not all of it, but this fucking series as a whole, it's up there for me, definitely. Like, this is one of the most enjoyable things. And hey, guess what? It's coming to fucking Blu-ray.
Buy the Blu-rays, watch Symphogear.
Yes, I will. Most definitely.
Yeah,
because if they had already released it on Blu-ray, I would have wanted to see how it wraps up first. But if this is the ending, and I assume it's gonna be, I can see them doing more, but I don't know if I want to, because I don't know if they will do a better ending than this.
Maybe
they will
at some point. I don't know.
Maybe, sure.
Like, here's the thing.
Can you imagine Symphogear with a movie budget? Holy fuck!
No, I can't. No,
I want to.
But yeah, I mean, as far as the anime side goes, maybe if they do a movie at some point down the line, I don't know what it would cover or what it might be, but it'd be cool if Symphogear had its big theatrical debut. On the other side, hey, how about something that's not a mobile game, please?
Yeah.
And I spitballed some of these ideas towards you before. I could see it working as a lot of people would say, make it a fighting game. Yeah, sure, that'd work great. How about a character action game? Like, the dream.
Give it platinum.
The far out dream, 30 galaxies away, 50 billion light years out there, is a Symphogear character action game developed by Platinum.
Yeah.
Failing that, how about a Muso style game?
Yeah, that's probably, if they do anything not mobile, that's probably the easiest cash grab for them. Like, give it to Omega Force and make it a Muso game, because with the noise being the disposable mass villain type, you could easily turn this into a Muso thing. And then you have, the gear users as the final bosses in each of those stages. So that's an easy thing. And I'm really surprised, actually, considering how long-running that franchise is, that we haven't gotten that yet.
And I mean,
although is Bandai one of the sponsors for this?
No, it's another company called Bushiroad. They've done some other big mobile stuff like Bang Dream.
Yeah, I guess then maybe not.
Symphogear XD Unlimited has been running for about 2 years now, and I'm pretty sure they're making money hand over fist because they were fucking geniuses with the marketing during this season. Because during the episode, when Carol comes back, they were like, hey, you can roll for Carol in the game now. And it was like, you fucking bastards. You magnificent bastards.
Well.
So there you go. I mean, my dreams for the future of the franchise are just that. But I would like to see it get like the big budget, like proper game that I would love for it to get someday. And maybe it could still happen. Like,
sure.
Look at how many years after Kill la Kill aired that it got a game. Granted, the game's not great, but there's a lot.
It looks good.
Yes, but there's still potential for something there. So
sure,
we'll see. How time happens and blah blah blue blue blue.
But for now, I'm really looking forward to purchasing the Blu-ray of this magnificent series.
Yeah,
beginning to end.
I'll be glad to have a physical copy to keep on my shelf. Keep your eyes on Discotheque Media's site for that.
Yes, most definitely. And yeah, I'm looking forward to rewatching that whole series all over again, and pretty sure I'll enjoy it just as much, if not more, because now I can, like you did with your rewatch, pay attention to all the seeds sown from the very get-go, which I didn't notice, of course.
Well, none of us noticed until we went back and rewatched it.
To be fair, I rewatched... did I rewatch? No, I think I dropped off the first season when I watched it first, and then I watched 1 through 3 like in a whole, but I never rewatched them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that.
I mean, I didn't watch the first season when it was airing. Then when they were like, oh, hey, Symphogear G, I was like, oh, guess I should watch the first one. Holy shit, this show's great. I can't wait for G.
And we finally get the non-edited versions of that, because Symphogear was one of those shows that in their TV broadcasts always used like anti-seizure visual thing, like where it darkened the screen and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And that's not on the Blu-rays. That's where they took that out. So I'm looking forward to get a better quality version of that as well. So yeah, cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Goddamn, looking forward to that. But for now, Symphogear XV is fucking great, and you should watch it. But if you haven't seen the other 4 seasons, watch them as well. 1 through 3 are great. 4 is all right, but 5 is again great or fantastic. And yeah, it's one of the most satisfying action franchises in an anime. And yeah, goddamn, it's good to be a Symphogear fan. And even if we don't get anything more than this was we had a really good time. The series creators were really good to us. You know, if you were a fan from beginning to end, you get your money's worth by the end of the series. So yeah, thanks, Satellite.
Thank you,
Well
Satellite. Done. Thank you, Akifumi Kaneko and Noriyasu Agematsu, and all the cast and crew. This was a great journey.
And that is a wrap on the 84th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jack Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut!
So long, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze!
Moms, am I right?
A big basket of cute animals and dark family secrets.
And murder on the Orient Express with a dash of magic.